Ew. It's got maggots and shit in it. Dead flies and all sorts of crap.
So can you tell us what car this is and what you're up to on it?
It's a 1934 or 5 Buick. It's got cable brakes that basically didn't work at all. So you've got to just free everything up, grease everything up, and there's a way of adjusting them. I've got the workshop manual now, because I didn't know before. You have to do it all in a certain order, which is a pain in the bum, but it won't work unless you do it properly. So first job is get all these sorted out. No, this has moved for a long time. The cables are quite tight, so you've got to lube all those up. Make sure they're all nice and free. So I'll go back to a central pivot system, but even that's worn out, so I'm not so worried about the pedal play where the pedals are wobbling around, but that central bar, what it should do is rotate evenly like that, yeah? And your bottom ones that stick out of the bar, pull your front brake cables this way to operate the brakes. The top ones pull them that way to operate the brakes, but everything's just seized up, so just got to strip it all down, lube it all up, put it back together, and then concentrate on adjusting it all properly. Right, so the first thing you want to do is lube up your cable. Plenty of grease on there. And you want to put copper slip wherever anything's going to bind. So you know, I know my brake shoes hit on these lumps, yeah?
Yeah.
So those that stick out, give them a bit of copper slip. So your cable runs over that lump there in the back plate, so I'll put some on that. Okay, right now. Let's try and free up that, because that doesn't look like it's moved in a long time, does it? Oh, blimey, it works. A bit of grease on that.
So what's different about these brakes rather than maybe disc brakes? Just right there, would that be the...
Disc brakes are totally different, but drum brakes are basically, they're all the same concept. You've got an adjuster there. That's that, yeah. So that goes in there. So you wind that in and out to do that end of the shoes.
Yeah.
This end goes around there, and you've got springs that hold all the shoes, which gets your brake return. If it was hydraulic, none of this cable would be here. You just have a piston in there, or a piston over there, whichever way it works out. And that is what spreads the brakes, yeah?
Yeah.
But on these, I'll show you in a minute when it's all in there, it's just done by a cable. It's just a different concept, you know? Before hydraulic brakes were sort of popular. A lot of it is just making sure everything's lubed up properly. You don't want to put tons of this stuff on because it can get on your brake linings. And grease and brakes don't go together really. Lube on those. Alright, so that's that. Now we've got to do where the cable pulls it. So that one goes on first, hooks in there, look. Yeah. We're going to lube up the base of that. Make sure that's all free, which it is. Bit in there. That hooks on your cable. Wait. And then you've got what they call a spreader. So that hits on the back of that, so you want to lube that up. That pivots, so you want to lube that up. Now you hit your brake shoes. A little bit on there. Whether it will stay there or not, we don't know. Oh, he lives in there. So that, see that lump there?
Yep.
That has to sit behind that. So when that goes in, you want that like that. Okay? So when you pull your brakes, it cantilevers that. I'll show you when it's on there, you can see it easier. I just need to sand those off. They've got too much glaze on them at the moment. That's just years and years of crap, you know? Road dust on grease and... See, that it won't do anything if you're trying to brake. It just gams it all up. Right, that's got the worst of that off. Okay, so they sit there. See those two arms there, what we were saying? Then you pull the brake cable. See it spread like that?
Oh right, yeah.
That's what forces your brake shoes apart. So then basically all your other springs, just hold it all into place. Put your drum on, check what fit you get, because you've got a hole in the drum, I'll show you in a minute. And you check, oh, you also got an eccentric there, I better undo that. Also, that pin there goes through to a big nut on the back. You can actually adjust it on those if they're really, really shot. So that nut moves your brake shoes centrally to the drum. And it actually physically pushes them that way or that way. But so far we haven't had to do that on any of them. Right, eccentric's working. Okay, right, let's get our springs on. Top spring goes on the bottom. If you leave all your tie bars out, the spring ties, when you're doing this, then you know you've got a bit more leeway on it all. So just drag your springs on. that in. Right, okay, so it's letting them all spread out, yeah? So you can get them on easier.
Yeah.
And you push them back up where they want to go. Sometimes you can do these by hand, other times you have to use the tool. Okay, that's that one. That's all they are, it's just a spring loaded. So you've got a hole in there. See that slotted hole?
Yeah.
So you push it on with the spring when it's spring loaded, and you just turn it that much and that holds it. Stop it coming out. Put your spring on. I'm not going to be able to see that one, I don't think. Okay, that's got him. Okay, and you've got a return spring there, just to hold the slack out of that. And if I crawl underneath, and yank on the brake cable, you should be able to see the whole motion of this thing working, yeah?
Okay. Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Easier. Okay, that's really clean. So that lets us put our feeler gauge in. The drum's worn. Alright, I'm going to have to Dremel that out. So what it's done, where the drum's worn, can you see that bit's raised slightly?
Okay, yeah.
What you should be able to do, that should be at that level. But if you put a feeler gauge in there, you're never going to get into your brakes to feel it, so you're just going to nick that edge out of it. Realistically that needs a new drum, but we'll do what we can because we haven't got one. Right, that's enough. So now you've got no lip there, you see, so your feeler gauge will slide straight in. I'll take a little bit more out of that. Got it. Right, you've got your locking pins, bolts. Right, your eccentric is there. It said in the book you want to be about 1.5 inches back that way.
So when you say your concentric, what are you referring to? What is it?
There's an adjuster in the back. It's an off-centre circle, so you turn it, it pushes that top brake shoe against it.
Yeah.
So just force that back down again.
So what's the purpose of the concentric then?
Just purely brake adjustment.
Oh, okay.
So if you look in there, so you've got an eccentric adjuster there, yeah?
Okay.
And you want to get 0.010 of an inch in there.
Okay.
Obviously that's loads more, but if you watch that gap, as I turn that, watch it, it'll close up.
Okay.
See it? Yeah?
Yeah.
Do it again. You have to force that back down. Okay, so you've got big gap.
Okay.
Yeah. So what I've got to do is set that so I can just get a 0.100 feeler gauge in there. Right, that's a nice fit there, yeah? And what you do is you hold that one and you do up the lock nut. If you can find it. Stick my head under the car. Yeah. Right, that's got that locked. Right, and just get our 10th thou in, which is nice. Come round to here. It's a lot bigger, which is not too much bigger. Check your bottom shoe.
So why does that gap change as you rotate the wheel?
Because you got your other adjustment there on that cam thing we put in.
Yeah.
So you've got a gap there, which is normal, but the gap is the same all the way round. If you measure it at one end and you've got basically more than 3 thou discrepancy, then you have to recenter your anchor pin there, but that's all looking good. So what we do then is adjust it on that adjuster back there, and that should bring it all into line. Right, okay. You want to adjust them up so you can just turn it. We need a bit more on that one. So it's literally so you can only just turn them by hand. So then when you put all your pins and the cables back on the crossbar, you've got half a chance. Well, I'm doing it as it tells you to do it in the book, because then you set it all up, but then you back them off again. So we'll have a read of the book now, because I think I've got to rebuild that next. Well, I've got to do that wheel, but you don't want to film the same thing twice, do you? It's just boring, isn't it? Moving the outer end of the tool towards the frame until the brake drum can just be turned by hand, which is what I've just done, yeah? Pull cables tightly towards cross shaft levers to remove all cable slack and lost motion at cam levers. Adjust clevises H so that the pins will barely enter the clevises and cross shaft levers easily on all 4 cables. Lock the clevis jam nuts and insert clevis pin cotters. Yanks call split pins cotters. Release adjusting screw using adjusting tool J16 until brake drum may readily be turned by hand. Insert screwdriver through the inspection hole in the drum, push the top shoe down against the eccentric, then further release the adjusting screw if necessary so the brake does not drag. Right, okay, so that's fairly simple, but what we've got to do first, the bit we've got to connect it all to is worn out, so I'll show you it. Okay, so that's your brake pedal, yeah?
Yeah.
Which I'm not too worried about this slack, because you'd have to get all bushes and remachine everything. So that is your brake rod, okay? So when you push your pedal down, that pulls that way, which operates that there on a cam system, yeah?
Okay.
So those two there, when you press it, that pulls your 2 top cables, yeah? And the bottom ones down there, they pull it the other way, but this, see all that play in it, yeah? That's never ever going to work properly, because you're trying to pull everything at the same motion, but with that like that, yeah, it's just going to skew itself like that. So we've got to take that out and have a look and see what we can do with it, yeah?
Okay.
So that's my next mission, is to try and get these split pins out of here and get those out, because there's no point in trying to adjust them when it's doing that, if you know what I mean. It will literally just skew itself sideways, and you'll have one side of the brakes jam on before the other. I don't know if there's actually a split pin in that one. That might be an easy fix. Let's have a look and see. $100 years worth of shit. Right. So that goes that away because that's the return spring. Once you stop. Look, in the book where it tells you to adjust things, it says K and M and all that. There's a little K stamped in there.
No way.
It's mad, isn't it? Right, well there isn't much play in that. I think it was basically just everything was loose. A bit easier to put back together, won't it?
That's the plan.
Right, clean our washers up. Those are shouldered, yeah? So that you should do up tight in the chassis, whereas they were loose.
Yeah.
So that's your pivot. So these aren't physically that loose. There's a bit there, do you know what I mean? But what they've done is where they've made these bushes, they've made them too long. So as you're tightening it up, that your bush is physically longer than your shouldered bolt.
Okay.
So as you're doing it, that's why they've left them loose. If you tighten it up, that'll jam up. So what we've got to do is just file those back a bit. Make sure inside faces are clean. Okay, now outsides. See where that one's sticking up so high there? Just want to flush them back. So then your shoulder section should come through. There you go, so you got your shouldered section there. I mean, you're still going to have that amount of play, but nothing like it was. So that's all.
Doesn't take much, is it?
No, well the trouble is, the minute you tighten it up, it'll just jam up on those bushes and it won't work. Okay. Like I say, you're going to have a millimetre there, but nothing like it was. So now we should be able to bolt all that back in. It should move nice and free. Right, let's give it a little bit on there. That way round like that. Right, let's tighten that up. Well, that was all hanging out and loose, but now it's nice and tight, look. So it snaps back on the brake pedal, which is what it should do. So we're just going to put the handbrake on, because that works in conjunction with the brakes. So basically your handbrake operates all four wheels.
Yeah.
Once it's in, so I'm just cleaning all the rods up, lube them up as I go. Yeah, all good.
Next week on the workshop.
Right, so far we've got a kickstart problem. It keeps slipping, so it's either the ratchet's actually knackered in it or the spring's busted in the back, which is quite normal. So I've taken everything off that's in the way so I can actually physically get to the gearbox now.